Imagine a scorching summer day, the kind where the air feels like it's cooking your skin. A quiet kid walks into a community pool, just wanting to swim, to escape the chaos of the world. But what happens when 3 older teens decide he's their target? What happens when they push him, literally, underwater, trying to break him? You won't believe what this kid did next, or how it left an entire pool in stunned silence. This is a story about courage, restraint, and the kind of strength that doesn't need fists to make a point. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll be questioning what real power looks like. And trust me, there's a twist you won't see coming. It was a blistering July afternoon in Mesa, Arizona, the kind of heat that makes you feel like you're walking on a skillet. The Escalante community pool was alive with the sounds of summer. Kids shrieking, water splashing, the faint hum of a distant ice cream truck. Ethan Caldwell, 14, stepped through the gate, his faded blue towel slung over one shoulder, a battered water bottle dangling from his hand. He wasn't here to make friends or show off. Ethan was the kind of kid who liked the quiet spaces, where the water was still, where he could glide through the pool and let the world fade away. His mom, Marissa, always said he carried an old soul in a young body. Maybe it was the way he watched the world, eyes sharp and thoughtful, like he was piecing together a puzzle no one else could see. Or maybe it was the lessons from his grandfather, Amos, a man who taught him to breathe slow, to move with purpose, to carry himself like he belonged, even when others tried to tell him he didn't. Ethan scanned his pass at the front desk, nodded at the clerk, and headed to the far corner of the pool, where the water was calm and the crowds were thin. He stretched out on the edge, cross-legged, letting the burn of the concrete ground him. For Ethan, the pool wasn't just a place to swim, it was a sanctuary. But sanctuaries don't always stay sacred. 20 minutes later, the gates swung open, and 3 boys strutted in like they owned the place. They were older, probably freshmen, with the kind of confidence that comes from never being challenged. The tallest, a kid with a mop of sun-bleached hair and aviator sunglasses perched on his nose, spotted Ethan immediately. "Yo, check out Buddha over there," he called, loud enough to turn heads. His name was Dylan, though Ethan didn't know that yet. The second boy, wiry with a crooked grin and a fresh sunburn, laughed. "What? He's gonna levitate or something?" The third, broader with a buzz cut and a swagger that screamed insecurity, added, "Bet he's just scared to get wet." Ethan didn't look up. He focused on the water, the way it caught the sunlight in tiny fracturing waves. Breathe in, breathe out. That's what Grandpa Amos always taught him. Asterisk, don't give them your energy. They don't deserve it. Asterisk, but silence is like bait to kids like these. Dylan kicked off his sandals and cannonballed into the shallow end, sending a wave that splashed Ethan's towel. The other 2, Nate and Bryce, Ethan would later learn, followed, their laughter sharp and performative. Ethan slid into the water, quiet as a shadow, and started his laps on the opposite side. He moved with precision, each stroke deliberate, cutting through the water like it was an extension of himself. For a moment, he thought he could outswim their attention. He was wrong. Have you ever been minding your own business, just tried to exist, when someone decides you're their entertainment? Ethan wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble was about to find him. And what happened next? It wasn't just about a fight in a pool. It was about a kid who'd been underestimated his whole life, proving something to himself and to everyone watching. Dylan's voice cut through the hum of the pool. "Yo, yoga boy, you deaf or what?" He was closer now, wading through the water with Nate and Bryce flanking him like a pack. Ethan stopped swimming and stood in the shallow end, water lapping at his chest. "I'm just swimming," he said, his voice low but steady. "Leave me alone." Dylan smirked, his sunglasses glinting. "Oh, he speaks. Thought you were too zen for us." Nate splashed water in Ethan's direction, a lazy, mocking gesture. "Come on, man, we're just messing with you. Don't be so serious." Bryce, the buzz-cut kid, edged closer. "But he can't even swim right. Look at him, all skinny and quiet." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't bite. "Breathe in, breathe out." Grandpa Amos's voice echoed in his mind. "Real strength isn't what you do to them, Ethan. It's what you don't let them do to you." He turned to swim away, But Dylan was faster, cutting him off. "Where you going, Sensei?" he taunted. "We're just trying to be friends." "I don't want friends like you," Ethan said, his tone still calm but edged with warning. That was the spark. Dylan's smirk faltered, just for a second, before his eyes hardened. "You think you're better than us." He stepped closer, chest puffed out, water sloshing around him. Nate and Bryce closed in two, their laughter fading into something uglier. The air shifted. You know that moment when you can feel something bad coming, like a storm cloud rolling in? Ethan felt it. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to happen. 3 against 1, in the middle of a crowded pool, with a lifeguard too busy scrolling on his phone to notice. Would Ethan back down? Or would he do something no one expected? Stick around, because what happened next changed everything. Ethan backed up the water, slowing his steps, his eyes darting between the 3 boys. Dylan was the leader, no question. His confidence fed the others. Nate, wiry and quick, was the instigator, egging Dylan on with every snicker. Bryce, the stocky one, was the muscle, ready to follow orders. Ethan's feet found the tiled floor of the pool, grounding him. He wasn't scared, not exactly. He'd been here before, not in a pool, but in moments where the world tested him. Moments where he had to choose who he'd be. Dylan lunged first, a sudden shove that sent Ethan stumbling backward into the water. The crowd gasped, a few kids on the bleachers standing to get a better look. Ethan's back grazed the pool floor, the sting of chlorine sharp in his nose. He didn't flail. He didn't panic. He sank for a moment, eyes open underwater, watching the distorted shapes of the boys above him. "Your first weapon is your breath," Asterisk Grandpa Amos had said. Asterisk, lose that, and you lose everything. When Ethan surfaced, he didn't gasp or yell. He stood, water streaming down his face, and faced them. "Stop," he said, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Dylan laughed, but it was forced. "Or what, kid? You gonna cry?" Nate splashed him again, harder this time, aiming for his face. "Lighten up, man. It's just a game." "This isn't a game," Ethan said, wiping water from his eyes. That's when Bryce moved, grabbing Ethan's shoulder and shoving him under again, this time with force. Ethan's head bumped the edge of the pool, a dull throb sparking behind his eyes. Above, their laughter echoed, wild and careless, like they thought he was nothing, like he wasn't real. Imagine being held underwater, your lungs burning, knowing no one's coming to help. Ethan could have fought back right then. He could have lashed out, swung a fist, done something to make them stop. But what he did instead, that's what makes this story unforgettable. And here's the thing. Someone was watching, someone Ethan didn't even know about, and they were about to change everything. Ethan surfaced again, coughing once, his hand brushing the tender spot on his head. He moved to the edge of the pool, his movements slow, deliberate. The boys thought they'd won. They were wrong. Ethan turned, facing them, his eyes steady. "I said stop." His voice was louder now, not angry, but firm, like a line drawn in the sand. Dylan's smirk returned, but it was shaky. "You gonna make us, ninja boy?" He stepped forward, splashing water aggressively. Nate and Bryce laughed, but it was nervous now, like they sensed something they couldn't name. Ethan didn't move, didn't flinch. He just watched, his body relaxed but ready, like a coiled spring. Then Bryce lunged, aiming to dunk Ethan again. Big mistake. Ethan moved like water, sidestepping in one fluid motion. Bryce stumbled, his momentum carrying him face first into the shallow end. The crowd gasped, a ripple of shock spreading through the pool. Ethan didn't touch him, didn't strike, just let Bryce's own force betray him. Bryce came up sputtering, red-faced, looking around like he'd been tripped by a ghost. "Try again," Ethan asked, his voice calm, but carrying a weight that silenced the laughter. Dylan's eyes narrowed. He wasn't laughing anymore. He stepped forward, his fist half raised, but Ethan was already moving, his body low, his stance balanced. "Don't," Ethan said, and there was something in his tone, a quiet promise, that made Dylan freeze. The pool was dead silent. Every eye was on Ethan, the quiet kid who just turned the tables without throwing a punch. But what happens when a bully's pride is on the line? Would Dylan back down, or would he push this too far? And who is watching from the sidelines, ready to flip this story upside down? Keep watching, because the real shock is still coming. The lifeguard finally looked up, his phone forgotten. "Hey, what's going on over there?" he shouted, whistle dangling from his neck. Dylan pointed at Ethan, his voice sharp. "This kid tried to start something." Ethan turned to the lifeguard, calm as ever. "They pushed me, dunked me. I told them to stop." Bryce was still coughing, Nate looking anywhere but at the lifeguard. The teenager in the high chair hesitated, then pointed at the three boys. "You three out. Now." Dylan's face twisted with fury. "What?" "He's the one," I said out. The lifeguard snapped. Grumbling, the trio climbed out of the pool, dripping and humiliated. Dylan kicked a chair as they stormed toward the gate, his sunglasses slipping down his nose. Ethan stayed in the water, alone again, but now the center of every whispered conversation. A little girl tugged at her mom's arm. "Mom, he moved like Spider-Man." A teenage boy nearby nodded. "Didn't even hit them. That's wild." A woman in a sun hat approached Ethan as he climbed out of the pool. "You okay, honey?" she asked, her voice soft but concerned. Ethan nodded, his towel clutched in one hand. "Yeah, I'm fine." She studied him, like she was trying to figure out how a skinny kid had just done what he did. "You need me to call someone?" "Your parents." Ethan gave her a small smile. "No, ma'am. I'm good. Thank you." She walked away, still glancing back, like she'd just seen something she'd never forget. Ethan sat on his towel, his heart still racing, not from fear but from the effort of holding back. He could have fought. He could have hurt them. But that wasn't what Grandpa Amos had taught him. Astra's power isn't what you use, Ethan. It's what you hold back. He took a long sip from his water bottle, staring at the ripples in the pool. Behind him, Dylan's voice carried as he argued with his friends by the vending machines, his pride clearly stinging. But here's where the story takes a turn no one saw coming. Ethan thought the fight was over, that he'd walk away and leave it behind. He was wrong. Someone had been watching the whole time. Not just the kids, not just the moms, but someone who knew exactly what Ethan had done, and that someone was about to change his life forever. Ethan wasn't always this calm, this controlled. 2 years ago, he was just another kid in Santa Fe, New Mexico, trying to fit in a new school. He was smaller then, quieter, the kind of kid who got picked last for dodgeball and laughed at for reading during recess. But everything changed when Grandpa Amos took him in for the summer. Amos wasn't just a grandfather. He was a martial arts master, a man who trained in jiu-jitsu and taekwondo for decades, not to fight, but to understand himself. In Amos's tiny backyard dojo, Ethan learned more than just how to move. He learned how to breathe through anger, how to stand tall when he felt small, how to let the world's noise pass through him like wind through a tree. "You're not training to hurt people," Amos would say, his voice low and steady. "You're training to protect who you are." Ethan would spend hours drilling wrist locks, footwork, breathing exercises, until his muscles ached and his mind was clear. Amos never let him spar, not yet. "You're not ready until you know why you're fighting," he'd say. One evening, under the glow of a desert sunset, Ethan asked, "What if someone deserves it? What if they're asking for it?" Amos sat on a creaky wooden bench, his hands folded. "Everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story, Ethan. The trick is knowing when to stop the fight before it starts. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your fists, but your choice." Amos passed away a year ago, his heart giving out quietly in his sleep. Ethan hadn't been the same since. He carried his grandfather's lessons like a shield, but also a weight. Every time he stepped into the pool, every time he walked through a new school hallway, he felt Amos watching, expecting him to be better than the world asked him to be. Sitting by the pool, Ethan closed his eyes, the memory of Amos's voice grounding him. The whispers around him faded. Kids talking about the ninja kid, parents murmuring about how he'd handled himself. He didn't care about their praise. He cared about the promise he'd made to himself, to never let someone else's hate define him. But then, a shadow fell over him. Ethan opened his eyes to see Nate, the wiry kid with the sunburn, standing a few feet away, hands stuffed in his pockets. "Hey," Nate muttered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the pool. Ethan looked up, waiting. I didn't think Dylan would go that far. I thought we were just messing around. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. You laughed. You helped. Nate winced, scratching the back of his neck. Yeah, I know. Dylan's been pissed at everything lately. His dad's been on him, and he takes it out on everyone else. I got caught up in it. Ethan stood, his towel falling to the bench. You don't have to follow someone like that, he said. You can choose better. Nate looked at him, something shifting in his eyes, like he'd just heard something he'd carry for years. He nodded once, then walked away, his shoulders hunched. Ethan grabbed his bag and headed for the gate, the lifeguard giving him a small nod of respect as he passed. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the parking lot. Ethan's flip-flops slapped against the pavement, a steady rhythm that matched his heartbeat. But this story isn't over yet. As Ethan walked away, he had no idea someone had recorded the whole thing. Not just a blurry phone video, but a clear, professional shot from camera no one noticed. And the person holding that camera, they weren't just a bystander. They were about to turn Ethan's quiet moment of courage into something the whole world would see. Stay with us, because what happens next will blow your mind. By the next morning, the video was everywhere. Not just in the Mesa Middle School group chat, but on X, TikTok, even local news sites. Someone had posted it with the caption, "Quiet kid shuts down bullies without throwing a punch." The footage showed Ethan's fluid sidestep, his calm wrist lock, the way he stood his ground without escalating. Comments flooded in. This kid's a legend. He moved like a pro. Who trained him? Ethan didn't know about the video until his phone buzzed with a text from his best friend, Lila. Dude, you're viral. He opened the link, his stomach dropping as he watched himself move through the pool, the moment frozen in time. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt exposed, like someone had ripped open a private part of his life and put it on display. That afternoon, while Ethan sat on his porch, flipping through Amos's old journal, his phone buzzed again. An unknown number. He ignored it, but it called again. Reluctantly, he answered. Hello. Ethan Caldwell, a woman's voice asked, professional but warm. My name's Sarah Torres. I'm a coach with the Arizona Youth Martial Arts League. I saw what you did at the pool yesterday. That wasn't just luck. You've been trained, haven't you? Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Yeah, my grandfather taught me. There was a pause, then Sarah's voice softened. I knew Amos Caldwell. He was one of the best jiu-jitsu instructors in the Southwest. I was at the pool yesterday, Ethan. I was filming a promo for a summer program, and I caught your encounter on camera. I'd like to meet you. I think you could inspire a lot of kids. Ethan's heart raced. He hadn't told anyone about Amos's training, not even his mom. I don't want to be famous, he said quietly. Sarah laughed gently. You don't have to be, but you could show kids like you, quiet, strong, underestimated, how to stand up without losing themselves. Think about it. They hung up, and Ethan sat there, Amos's journal open on his lap. A page caught his eye, a scribbled note in his grandfather's handwriting. Asterisk, the world doesn't need more fighters. It needs more people who know when not to fight. Asterisk, Ethan smiled, his eyes stinging. For the first time since Amos passed, he felt like his grandfather was right there with him, nodding that quiet nod of approval. Ethan could have walked away from that pool and never looked back. He could have let the world forget him. But sometimes the universe has other plans. Sometimes a single moment of courage can ripple out, touching lives you never imagined. And for Ethan, that moment was just the beginning. The next weekend, Ethan returned to the pool. Same towel, same routine, same quiet walk through the gate. His mom had asked if he was sure, especially after the video went viral. Nothing's changed, he told her. I'm still me. But the pool felt different now. Kids whispered as he passed, some with awe, others with curiosity. A few parents gave him knowing smiles, like they saw something in him they hadn't before. A small boy, maybe 7, approached him by the kiddie pool, clutching a flow tie. Are you the ninja kid? He asked, eyes wide. Ethan chuckled. I'm just Ethan. I do jiu-jitsu, not ninja stuff. The boy's face lit up. Can you teach me? Ethan hesitated, then crouched down. It's not about fighting. It's about staying calm, even when things get hard. You want to learn that? The boy nodded eagerly, then ran off to tell his mom. Across the pool, Ethan spotted Nate with a new group of friends. No Dylan, no Bryce. Nate caught his eye and gave a small nod. Ethan nodded back. No words, just understanding. Later, at the snack bar, the woman in the sun hat from last week stopped him again. "You're a good kid," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." Ethan smiled. "I won't." That night, Ethan sat with his mom, Marissa, on the couch, a bowl of popcorn between them. "I got a call today," she said, her voice careful. "From Sarah Torres. She told me about the martial arts program. Said you could train with them, maybe even teach one day." Ethan looked down, his fingers tracing the edge of the bowl. "I don't know if I'm ready for that." Marissa squeezed his shoulder. "You don't have to be ready now, but your grandpa would be proud. You're carrying what he gave you." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He thought of Amos, of the pool, of the choice he'd made to stand his ground without losing himself. He wasn't a hero, not a ninja, not a viral sensation. He was just Ethan, and that was enough. Ethan's story didn't end at the pool. It was just the start. A quiet kid who stood up to bullies without throwing a punch, who turned a moment of chaos into a lesson in strength. And that video, it didn't just go viral. It inspired kids across the country to take up martial arts, to learn how to stand tall without fighting back. Ethan started training with Sarah's program, not to become famous, but to honor his grandfather's legacy. And every time he stepped into the dojo, he felt Amos's hand on his shoulder, guiding him. So what's the real lesson here? Strength isn't about how hard you hit. It's about how steady you stand when the world tries to push you down. Ethan didn't need to fight to win. He won by choosing who he wanted to be. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the quiet strength in your own life, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe it's a kid who feels invisible, a friend who's struggling to find their voice, or even yourself on the days when you need a reminder that you're enough. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. What's a moment when you stood your ground? Because the world doesn't need more fighters. It needs more people like Ethan, who know how to walk away with their head held high. Until next time, keep your heart strong and your mind clear. We'll see you in the next story.